Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2004 Christmas animated film, The Polar Express. Now, this is a film that nowadays definitely has a bit of a polarizing reputation among critics. And to be honest, it had that even upon its release. And after watching the film all the way through for the first time recently, I could definitely see why. But I didn't hate this like some other people did, but I definitely didn't love it either. There are people who love this. This is like their favorite Christmas movie. I'm not one of those people. But then again, I'm the weirdo who loves Robin Williams' toys and thinks that's one of my favorite Christmas films. So, I can kind of I can understand and I can connect with you a little bit on the level of rooting for an underdog or being a big fan of a film that isn't necessarily as beloved as other Christmas films are. And I tried to do that with this movie, but there's too many things about it that just didn't really work for me personally, or I just didn't really care for. But I still just thought it was adequate and average and just kind of okay. The kind of movie where I watch once and I'm like, "Eh, okay, that was alright." Don't really have a desire to watch it again, though. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, I would like to, give a special shout out to both, Bronson and Sean for requesting this review, and if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Polar Express is directed by Robert Zemeckis. And yes, Robert Zemeckis had worked with animation before in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but that was a film that was also part live action. I know that this was initially planned to be in live action, but Zemeckis was like, hey, this is going to cost way too much money in live action, and I don't think it's going to work. So let's do it in animated form. And the studio agreed. But Zemeckis decided to make this into a showcase of some new tech that he developed involving motion capture and CGI. He pulled a James Cameron with this film. That's basically what he did. He did what James Cameron did with Avatar and just really made Polar Express purely for a way to showcase his new technology. And there are points where the motion capture really does add a certain unique style to the film and a certain flair to it. And so does the CGI. But then there's other points where it's distracting and it's not only uncanny valley nightmare fuel, but it looks like a cutscene from a PlayStation game. And it's even framed the same way. The direction for me by Zemeckis, it's it's honestly middle of the road. Like there are moments with the direction where it's all inspiring and it's honestly pretty incredible, like the roller coaster sequence, the sequence on the ice, the scene when the Polar Express first arrives at Hero Boy's house, the Aurora Borealis sequence, the first time they enter the North Pole, like stuff like that. The direction definitely does shine, but then there's other scenes just between the characters or just little moments where there's not a lot happening or scenes that are intended to be more comedic that just don't really land as well and aren't really quite on the same level. And those are the scenes where Zemeckis' lack of experience in directing animation really shows itself. And yeah, that's why I just feel the direction is just it's a mixed bag. Like it's got some good things, but it's also got some bad things. The framing at times can be really solid, and other times it can be kind of awkward. The way certain scenes are lit can kind of look just very similar to the point where There's not enough variety in terms of the way that scenes are lit. There can be moments where the camera is very lively and very energetic, but then there can be moments where it's just kind of stodgy and kind of stiff. And it's a film where I do feel that a more experienced director in the realm of animation really could have made this film better. You don't have to be the director, Robert. I know it's a passion project. I know it's something you really want to do. I know it's your technology. I know it's something that you're pushing, but you can be the producer. You can be involved in the script. You can be the guy who's hands on with the motion capture stuff. It could still be your technology, and you don't have to be the guy behind the camera. You don't have to be the one that's setting up the shots and uh, utilizing all of the different techniques within the confines of the computer, because that's where the direction is coming from. It's not coming from the director, in his swivel, seat, on on the arm, that's moving around the set. Like, that's not what you get here. It's a completely different realm of entertainment and a different form of media. So it just is one of those things where I think it's just kind of a weird fit. And I think Zemeckis directed it more as an ego thing than necessarily because he was the best guy for the job. But that's just me personally. He did help co-write the script along with William Broyles Jr. based on the storybook The Polar Express by Chris Van Allsburg. And I can see why some people really like this story and this script, because it's something a little bit more fresh and different from your average holiday fare. But at its core, it's still the same thing. It's all about believing in Santa Claus. That's the main message of the film, believing in Santa, even when there's all these other reasons not to. Um, and that's the whole journey with the hero boy. It's him finding a way to believe in Santa again, and enabling him to be able to hear the sleigh bells ring. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of about, growing up, and when you're no longer a kid and you no longer have that childlike innocence and it gets lost, you don't believe in things like Santa anymore. I think at its core, there are some promising and interesting ideas there, but just the way everything is set up and presented in the end, it doesn't quite work as consistently as it could. For one, I don't really think it has the best character development for these characters. I know this is the way it was in the book, but that doesn't mean you have to have these characters be nameless and really not that know that much about them. Like, who is Hero Boy? Oh, we know that he's an older boy. He's close to that age where you start to become disillusioned and stop believing in Santa Claus. And he is definitely somebody who in the past was an ardent believer of Saint Nick, but now he's struggling with his faith in Santa, and he's very inquisitive, he's very intelligent, but he can also be very impulsive, and you don't know his name. He has loving parents, and it seems like he's pretty well off, and he winds up getting a ticket to the Polar Express, which is this train that just shows up in the middle of the night and takes all of these kids and takes them to the North Pole. Which, if you think about it, that concept, it's kind of creepy. Just some random train that shows up in the middle of the night, and some weird conductor gives you a golden ticket and then tells you to come on board. And You all ride together in this mysterious train with this mysterious conductor with a creepy mustache, and you all go to the North Pole. I mean, it's kind of it honestly is kind of a creepy concept if you think about it. And even the whole reason behind it just seems kind of off. Okay, these kids are picked up so they can go to the North Pole because they don't believe in Santa for some reason. So their belief in Santa can be strengthened again. Is that what it is? Or are they just taken onto the train so they can learn life lessons that are revealed to them on their tickets at the end of the ride? I don't really know. Because it kind of seems like this is like a tradition where a group of kids are chosen and then they go to the North Pole and then they get involved in this ritual involving Santa Claus, and he picks the somebody at random to have the first present of Christmas. And I'm like, okay, what what leads to these kids being chosen though? That's not really clear. Like you're thinking it's they don't believe in Santa or they have certain issues with Santa Claus, but it doesn't seem like Know It All feels that way. It doesn't seem like everybody on the train feels that way. Well, I mean, at least the people that we know anything about. There's always passengers, and there's so many of them. I don't know their names, and I don't know why they're there, and I don't know who they even are. And you don't know that much about the conductor, and you get a little bit about Know It All, but not really that much. You get a little bit with Hero Boy and Hero Girl. But Hero Girl, you don't really get a lot other than she's a natural leader. Like, what about her home life? What about all this other stuff? Why is she having a crisis of faith when it comes to her believing in Santa Claus? You have this kid who might as well be Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle, who understandably doesn't believe in Santa because he never visits him and doesn't get presents because it's insinuated that Billy the Lonely Boy is poor. And it's kind of one of those things where when Santa does finally give him a present and does give him Christmas decorations, it's kind of like, why did you take so long, Santa? Why did this kid spend so many Christmases with nothing when you could have just went there and helped this kid out the entire time? Like, it's kind of messed up if you think about it, like how Santa treated this young boy, Billy, which honestly, it's Dewey. It is totally Dewey. They just copied the kid from Malcolm in the Middle and just used his entire likeness for that character. I half expected him to be like, "Your time is over, old man." Yeah, yeah, to the conductor or to Santa Claus. Um, make a better movie. But no, honestly, the script needed a lot more development with these kids. There's no reason for me to really care that deeply about them because I don't know that much about them, period. The only one I kind of feel for is Billy because it's established that he's poor and he has no reason to really believe in Christmas because I guess you just assume that he never had Christmas because his parents were too poor to provide that for him. And so you have the stuff of the Polar Express. Kids get on the Polar Express, they go to the North Pole, but all these different things happen just in order to pad the runtime. They don't necessarily make that much sense. Like, why did the kid not just wait there? Why did Hero Boy not just wait in the car, wait in the, the portion of the train where all the kids were, and hold on to the ticket so then when the conductor comes back with Hero Girl, be like, "Oh, I have the ticket." Why did he have to cross trains? Why did that have to even happen? Just so we can add some extra intensity to the film? No, really, the only reason why it needed to happen is to pad the runtime and also to have one of the numerous scenes that are just there to showcase a 3D sequence. I refuse to believe that there was any other reason for that. The ticket flying around like it's the feather in Forrest Gump, and then getting crumpled up, or getting eaten by an eagle. The eagle feeds it to maybe not eaten, but grabbed by an eagle, and then the eagle feeds it to its baby, and then the baby spits it up, and then it falls down a waterfall, and then lands on the side of the road, and there's wolves, and then the thing flies further in the air, and then just somehow magically is back in the train. That's just there for the 3D. That's the same thing when the pin in the brake or some portion of the train pops out, and it's flying around. Totally just done the way that it is, just for the 3D effects. There's so many moments in this, like the star on top of the tree and that whole scene. There's just so many sequences in this that are clearly set up in a obvious fashion for the 3D. Like, not in a way where it's like, oh, that could be 3D. It's like, oh wow, that is obviously intended to be a 3D effect. To the point where it does become a bit distracting. I have to be perfectly honest. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just seems like it's just a setup for some kind of long demo reel of the animation, the roller coaster sequence, the sequence on the ice. All these different things just happen in order to delay the train from getting to the North Pole faster. That's really what's going on. They have the whole bit with Hero Boy getting on top of the train and first meeting the tramp, and then I guess trying to utilize the tramp's help to try to find Hero Girl to give her ticket back. And it's this long drawn out scene, and the script tries to set up the tramp as like a good guy, but he just comes across as really creepy. And then you get to the engineers, and they're the creepiest of them all, with the guy with the long beard. There's a whole scene where the guy is literally being tortured in order to get these caribou to move out of the way because they're blocking the railroad tracks in one scene. There's stuff in this that is just straight up nightmare fuel for kids, and not just the uncanny valley animation. Like, yeah, that definitely is part of it, with the weird mouths moving, but they don't match what they're saying, or the unblinking eyes, which apparently was the Zemeckis thing, because he felt like it wasn't necessary to have the characters blink. He's also the reason why the elves look like they're drunk all the time, because of their rosy cheeks. Apparently, the animators who worked on this, they didn't want to do that stuff, but Zemeckis forced them to. And yeah, the stuff with the engineers, there was supposed to be a longer scene with them, but it was cut, and I watched it, and I'm glad it was, because it was not a good song, and there was a fart joke in it. That would have made this film even worse. That would have made it from an okay movie to me to a below average film if you had that number in there with a fart joke. But yeah, a lot of this is just padding on top of padding in order to delay the trip to the North Pole. That's really all it is, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't even seem like there's a ton of character development that's made with these characters either as the story progresses. There's interesting ideas and concepts that are thrown around, like Santa using these old toys and recycling them, but that whole scene is just more nightmare fuel. There's like there's a moment in that scene which, by the way, I mean, it had to be intentionally made to be scary and creepy and eerie because of the fact that there's not really much lighting in that room. It's all full of creepy, dilapidated, old, worn out, dirty dolls and marionettes. One marionette comes to life and says, "You're a Scrooge, just like me." And the kid, the hero boy, is standing there. It's the tramp guy who's messing with him. And right behind him is a marionette that I swear to God is just the clown puppet from Poltergeist. It's the same design and everything. I'm like, that was intentional. Had to be intentional. There's no way it wasn't. And I could maybe be okay with that, with a certain tone, with a certain approach to things, but this is so lighthearted and so much trying to be some kind of Christmas holiday cheer kind of movie, complete with musical numbers. And then you have a creepy out of place scene like that with marionettes and clown puppet marionettes straight out of Poltergeist. It just was not really a good fit. And then once you get to the North Pole, there was also other really weird and just off things about it, like this whole scene where these elves who for some reason all sound like Joe Pesci are looking at all these monitors with all these kids on them and talking about who's naughty and who's nice, and they're basically watching these kids. I know that's what Santa and his elves do, but to actually see that and to see the way that it was presented and to see like a screen that had all these images of like real kids, it's just, I don't know if icky is the right word, but it was just off. And then even the stuff with the elves as well, and the whole thing where Santa shows up and he chooses the hero boy as the boy to get the first gift of Christmas, and the way that they just idolize Santa in this just kind of creepy way with all these like legions of elves and this the empty rooms and the different spots in the North Pole that are just playing old Christmas songs on a loop, and there's no one there. And even the whole idea, whole concept of this giant bag of presents and possibly being trapped inside of it, and there's just a lot of stuff about this. It's honestly kind of creepy when you really think about it. And yeah, the whole message is sweet and charming about believing in yourself or believing in Santa or being a leader or learning patience, but they're all very common things, very common lessons. And even the whole stuff where the kid loses the bell and then gets it back on Christmas morning, like you that's expected. That's a completely expected moment. And yeah, the narration, which is rather somber and rather kind of sad way to end the movie, with the narrator talking about, which is an older hero boy, talking about how throughout the years he was the only one that could hear the bell, but everyone else around him couldn't hear it anymore. And I'm like, how does Santa even continue to even do all of this stuff every year if so many people don't believe in him anymore? Like, is this going to be one of those things like Tinkerbell, where if you don't believe in Santa enough, he's just going to keel over and die? Like, I just, I know some people say, "Oh, you're overthinking it," and I'm like, maybe, but there's just a lot of stuff in the script and the story that it just isn't that engaging to me personally. The characters aren't that strong. There are some characters I don't like at all, like Know It All. I hate that character. I think the character is supposed to be a character you don't like, but the way the character is set up, there's zero redeeming qualities for him. You don't even feel like he really learned his lesson that much by the end. He gets a talking to, hey, be patient. But like, do you really buy that he's gonna really learn that lesson fully? No. And just other stuff too. Like, why is there a musical number with Aerosmith? Just out of nowhere. Now we have Steven Tyler as an elf singing. So there's just a lot of stuff in this. And I'm just like, I just don't think this works. But that's just me personally. A lot of people love it. Um, I wish it was better. I do, because I like the idea of going on this journey, this magical journey on the Polar Express, and you don't necessarily know exactly how everything's going to turn out in the end, and learning lessons along the way, and having all these thrilling scenes involving the train and it breaking down, or them having to find a way to get to the next track despite all of the obstacles in their way. I like that. I do. But it doesn't really become something that lives up to its full potential, because the character depth is not really there most of the time. The the humor, it's not really that funny, and the tone is just completely all over the place. In one scene, it's very cheery and full of Christmas magic and chestnuts roasting on the open fire and sugar plums dancing in people's heads. And then in the next scene, it's straight out of Dead Silence. Like, it's just that kind of movie where you're just like, what the hell was that? Like, that's really the response that this film got from me when it comes to the way the story unfolded and the way everything was ultimately structured with the overall script. Maybe it's because they were trying to just take a short story, a short storybook, and expand it to a feature length. That could have been part of it. Maybe this would have been better as a short. Because I can only imagine how something like The Snowman, if you try to make that into an hour and 40 something minute movie, that wouldn't work. Maybe this is one of those things. And then you have the voice cast, which for the kind of film that this is, it's fine. I think Tom Hanks was spread way too thin here, though. But I do think he did a great job voicing the conductor. I liked his hobo voice. At points, you could hear a bit of his roles in the Burbs or Money Pit in his hobo performance. So it was fun to see him do that kind of role again. Uh, it was only in the realm of animation, but it was fun to see Tom Hanks let loose like that. Um, the Santa Claus voiceover, though, nah, you could have had somebody else do that, because it was just Tom Hanks doing a lower voice that they messed with in post with a voice modulator. And so it just made him sound like he was speaking through a talk boy or he was possessed. The Hero Boy's father, you didn't need him to voice that character. Like, he didn't have to voice so many characters. And what's crazy is he initially was pegged to voice everybody. In fact, the original cut of the film, he voiced Hero Boy, but the studio and the producers, they saw it and were like, this doesn't work. And so that's when Daryl Sabara was cast to voice Hero Boy. And I definitely feel that was ultimately the right choice, because it's just too much to have Tom Hanks voicing everybody. He's already doing the narration of the adult Hero Boy. You don't, and the motion capture stuff. You don't need to have him also voice the kid. And yeah, Daryl Sabara did a good job bringing out the different aspects of the character and his personality, and that was a pretty good performance by him when it comes to the voiceover work. Nona Gaye, I also felt did a good job as Hero Girl, despite how limited and just how honestly paper thin her role is. You're a good leader. That's really about it. Jimmy Bennett, he was fine voicing Billy, aka Dewey. Um, Eddie Deezen, I hated his voiceover in this. He's just doing the same shtick that he's done in everything, and the same thing that he did in like Dexter's Lab, and it's so fake sounding, and it doesn't fit with the tone of the film or the overall voice cast. Everybody is just kind of for the most part, other than Tom Hanks, just sounding like kids naturally. And then you got Eddie Deezen over here clearly sounding like a grown man trying to sound like he's a kid. It's kind of like when Martin Short was Clifford, but even more annoying. Michael Jeter in his last role before his death, he voiced Smoking Steamer. A little bit that you could hear, he was fine. Um, and he had some other voice actors and actresses, but that's really the main cast that really has any sort of runtime. The cinematography by Don Burgess and Robert Presley, it's impressive at points. At other points, it does have this cutscene from a video game quality to it. The editing by Jeremiah O'Driscoll and R. Orlando Duenas is another sort of thing that at points it's really tremendous and honestly really technically sound, but then there's other moments where it's just eh. The animation itself, when it comes to the train, when it comes to the scenes that involve a lot of stuff that is just showcasing the overall setting, like the North Pole or the town in Michigan or stuff like that. I think that's where the CGI really shines, or the interior of the train. But when it comes to the people, it has not aged well, and I don't think it probably looked that great even in 2004. Um, the dead eyes, man, a doll's eyes, lifeless eyes. That bit in Chip and Dale is so true. It really is. Now, the music by Alan Silvestri, I love Alan Silvestri. He's one of my favorite composers. He did the Back to the Future score, which in my opinion is one of the most iconic scores in cinematic history. Like it really is. It's that good of a score. And I love his work in The Abyss. I even really liked his score for Judge Dredd more than I like the overall film. So I'm a fan of his. This is one of his weaker scores, if you ask me, because so much of it is just him copying other people. It's blatantly obvious, too. The main theme is copying either John Debney's score from Elf or Danny Elfman's score from Edward Scissorhands. And the rest of the music just sounds like generic Christmas music. So I don't really think it's one of his best scores. I know a lot of people love this score. I'm just indifferent on it, to be honest. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it has to do with how lazy it is. I know he can do better. I know that Alan can do some incredible work. And this is just him on autopilot. And the pacing of the film, I think it's kind of slow because there's just so much obvious padding because it's a short story and they had to extend it to an hour and 40 some minutes. And there are some moments of spectacle and some thrilling scenes, and there are some sequences that definitely stand out, but at the end of the day, like because of the fact that the script isn't as strong as it could be, especially when it comes to the characterization, it just isn't a film that just really grabs you throughout. It's a movie where you're like, oh, that's kind of fun, and oh, that's interesting, or that's cool, or that's some nice bits of animation, but it's not something that like really pulls you in. At least not to me personally. But anyway, I still thought that it was all right. It was worth a watch at least once, for the animation that I felt genuinely was impressive and didn't look like a cutscene from a video game. Um, and for certain aspects of the story that I did appreciate, but yeah, it's not something that I'm gonna really have any desire to watch again. But that's just my thoughts on it. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.